Good morning, everybody.
Howdy.
Seems like it's been a while since we've done a video, huh?
Yeah, it has.
Not doing as many as we usually do.
Just real busy. It's the time of the season.
Yeah, and our side business has been busy this year.
Yeah.
With everybody buying Christmas gifts, so anyway. Got a couple of thank yous before we get into this. Thank you, everyone, so much for the Christmas cards. Appreciate that. And Trevor.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love the tat that
Right,
looks like the
okay.
Watchtower, the
Yeah.
truth about the truth.
Yeah. the
Brilliant design.
Yes.
So thank you
Wonderful.
so much.
Wonderful.
I love our friends.
Yes. One of the things that we're going to tackle during this particular video is something that is being thrown into the American language, the American narrative, and that's called fake news.
Now, as Jehovah's Witnesses, Mikey, we have always been familiar with this because we have been told our entire lives that apostates propagate half-truths and lies.
They tell half-truths
and don't
and lies.
believe, Satan's news media. So, I mean, this is something we are very familiar with. And
Yes, and having been Jehovah's Witnesses for the vast majority of our lives and having walked away from it, we now know the catchphrases, the terminology, and how this terminology is designed to shut down your critical thinking. And it's actually manipulation. When you hear that knock on your door Saturday morning and you peek out through your window and you realize that there's two well-dressed people with book bags at your door, you readily recognize them as Jehovah's Witnesses. And, you want to be polite. You open up the door and they'll say, "Hey, have you heard the good news?" And they'll offer some article in the Watchtower or Awake magazine, and you just say politely, "No, I'm not interested." But what you don't realize is that Jehovah's Witness at your door is hiding a terrible, terrible secret. And in fact, if you dare try to bring that secret to the forefront or to their realm of view, they will readily dismiss it as, well, that's apostate lies. Jehovah's Witnesses are not like this at all, when in fact they are. And the sad thing about all of this is like what the news media is trying to do to everybody, bringing real news to the forefront in life. They're being demonized, and it's being called fake news. And there seems to be a real strong movement at least in the United States that I can speak of, to shut down these alternative news sources.
And even the government is trying to do a government media,
Yeah.
to where they have control over the media and can censor it the way they want.
And the Watchtower Bible Tract Society is no different. They would love nothing more than to see somebody like my wife and I and our channel taken off of YouTube, because it's extremely damaging to their narrative. Because, see, they have this perception that when they come to your door on Saturday morning, well-dressed with their suit and ties and book bags, that
nice
they're
Christian
Christians. And we are here to show otherwise. Now, let me show you how this works, okay? Reading from their bound volume, this comes from their Awake magazine, October 22nd, 1989. And the title of this article is called "A Deadly Growing Menace." And if you can look at the bottom, you will see that is the Awake magazine and what month and what year that this was published. And there you have the satanic symbol, the 5-star cross, and they even went so far as to put some sort of demonic face in the center
Baphomet.
of Baphomet. Now, I want to read a couple of paragraphs because the unsuspecting public that read this magazine, their focus was diverted from the Watchtower Bible Tract Society to other organizations that are involved in satanic rituals. This is what they write. Second paragraph. "Does it make you shudder to think of mothers and fathers offering their own children to be sexually molested by others? finally to be slaughtered on an altar before all onlookers for religious gratification? Well, just stopping right there, how many Jehovah Witness children have been sacrificed on operating room altars for refusing blood transfusions?
Or sexually molested, and the parents may not have handed them over, but they might as well have, when they do not contact the authorities to stop the abuse.
Yes, and we're going to tie all this together because in the past year or so, the Australian Royal Commission had the Watchtown Bible Tract Society before them to answer allegations of child sexual abuse. And what we have is we have the final report and their analogy regarding Jehovah's Witnesses and child sexual abuse. But we want to set this up first because we want you people to realize that on a Saturday morning, when these perceived Christians come knocking at your door, they're hiding a terrible, terrible secret.
And I just want to mention that our friend Nicholas in the UK has asked for our thoughts on it. So this is just our humble opinion on all of this with some information from Watchtower, like the article Mike is sharing. And so we thank you for the opportunity to give our humble, opinion, because, we're nobodies.
Well,
we weren't high up in the organization.
No, but
we were just in it a very long time.
Rank and file, but, as Jehovah's Witnesses, Kim and I did pay attention to a lot of things that were being said, a lot of things that were being done. And this is why we left at this point, because things no longer made any sense from the perspective of God's viewpoint. So I'm going on. This is on now on page 3 of that article, another paragraph. Reading from right here, you can see
halfway down
where we've highlighted it. It says, a religion that embraces as part of its ceremonies the sacrificing of both animals and humans, the molesting of children, the rape of adolescent virgins, sexual promiscuity, and other such activities is called Satanism or devil worship. So now they've categorized any religion that practices child molesting, the rape of children, sexual promiscuity as Satanism and devil worship. Now keep in mind, when they handed you this magazine, they wanted to divert your attention away from them and what their practices are in secret.
Well, I can remember when the scandal about the abuse within the Catholic Church first came out.
Yeah.
I can remember working out in the field service knocking on doors, and especially his mother was so gung-ho to condemn the Catholic Church, and it's like, oh, I'm sure you've heard what's been in the news lately about the Catholic Church and their child abuse problem.
That becomes a talking point.
This is condemned in the Bible, and then would turn it into, God's kingdom and Jehovah's Witnesses, the clean organization, and God does not approve of this practice. But yet now when it's their own organization, they don't want to talk about it.
No.
You cannot talk to it with most witnesses.
You will shut down the critical thinking because the Jehovah Witness doesn't view what's happening inside their own church as part of the narrative that I'm going to finish reading here. Okay? So bizarre, so apart from the norm are the practices of Satanism that many officials and citizens alike refuse to believe that people do these things as part of their worship. And that right there is what a Jehovah Witness will read, and they will refuse that the child sexual molestation that's running rampant with inside the Watchtown Bible Tract Society is not part of their worship. Now, instead of opening up their mind when somebody is bringing this narrative to the forefront into the open, such as what's happening or has happened with the Australian Royal Commission, the Jehovah Witness will readily go and say, well, that's just apostate propaganda. That now becomes fake news, people. They won't believe it because they don't perceive it as part of their worship, because when they go into their kingdom halls on a Saturday or on a Sunday morning, they're sitting there singing from a songbook, pretending to praise God, and then they listen to a 45-minute Well, now it's a 30-minute public address, and then they'll sit and study a Watchtower article that's the true indoctrination of the Jehovah Witness.
Well, I was going to mention that since we've been in contact with probably thousands of people over the past 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, something
Yeah.
like that. 4 years, yeah. And what has become apparent is that some of these abusers, while they're abusing a child, they are actually praying to God while they're abusing this child. And I've even talked to some adults, and one of my friends is like, while they're being abused, they have to pray to God with their abuser.
So
how is this not part of a worship?
Exactly right. How is that not part of the worship?
Disturbing.
It's very disturbing. Now, to bring all of this to an absolute eye-opening conclusion about those nice Christian people knocking on your door on a Saturday morning, let's take a look at what the Australian Royal Commission, the government of Australia, concluded regarding the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Watchtower Bible Tract Society.
So I want to thank everybody who sent me the link to this report.
And it is up on our website, right?
And it is already on our website. So down below, I'm going to put the link to that blog on our website. And I want to thank Barbara Anderson because she sent me the links to articles and the report that is on our website. And many others did also. Now, what's interesting about this report is we all know, about the Australian Royal Commission. Now, any of you who are newly out and have not seen them yet, you can actually go watch the hearings that were streamed out from the commission's, the government website. And Jake Control on YouTube has the entire streaming of these testimonies. And on the last day was governing body Jeffrey Jackson. So if you haven't seen those yet, please go watch them.
Yes.
So in fact, I'll put a link to his channel down below.
And you can determine for yourself whether this is fake news or not.
Yeah, when it's streamed directly out. And in this report, they even talk about streaming the hearings out to the public. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got the report here in front of me. On page 77, Section 10, they have the response of the Jehovah's Witness organization to the sexual abuse of children. Now, this is kind of like their overview or their summary of this report, because I didn't want to, go through the whole report and, cover all of these points. So
now remember what I read. The religion that embraces as part of its ceremonies the sacrificing of both animals and humans, the molesting of children, the rape of adolescent virgins, sexual promiscuity, and other such activities is called Satanism. Now keep in mind that as we read these, that the Australian Royal Commission is responding to the fact that the Watchtower Bible Tract Society has been very much improperly handling this situation and in a lot of cases kept it silent.
Yeah. Now, at the beginning of the report on page 7, when you read that, you get the impression that the Australian Royal Commission is not done with the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they mention, more
ongoing
and roundtables and an ongoing, thing about this. So down on page 77, in response of the Jehovah's Witness organization to the sexual abuse of children, I'm just going to read this. Having regard to the various matters we have discussed in this report, we have reached a number of general conclusions on the Jehovah's Witness organization's response to the sexual abuse of children. We do not consider the Jehovah's Witness organization to be an organization which responds adequately to child sexual abuse. We do not believe that children are adequately protected from the risk of sexual abuse for the following reasons.
Isn't that what a satanic cult would do? I just read their description of what a satanic practice is.
Yeah. The first point, the organization relies on outdated policies and practices to respond to allegations of child sexual abuse. Also, those policies and practices are not subject to ongoing and continuous review.
They just shut it right down.
They're stubborn.
They shut it right down because that becomes part of their worship. and they don't want to shut down what is part of their worship, which is the ritual practice of abusing children.
The policies and practices are, by and large, wholly inappropriate and unsuitable for application in cases of child sexual abuse. The organization's retention and continued application of policies such as the two-witness rule in cases of child sexual abuse shows a serious lack of understanding of the nature of child sexual abuse. Point 2. The organization's internal disciplinary system for addressing complaints of child sexual abuse is not child or survivor focused, in that it is presided over by males and offers a survivor little or no choice about how their complaint is addressed.
Isn't that what Satanists would do? Isn't it, folks?
Complete control.
Complete control over the child sexual abuse. They offer little or no choice about the complaint that's addressed. They keep it hush-hush, hush-hush, just like any satanic worshiper would do. They would put into place things that would keep this practice silent and hidden in the dark.
And I just want to mention, Nicholas, if you're watching this, that a young woman that our daughter grew up with was abused by her stepfather. And when they called the authorities, the mom and the daughters were threatened with excommunication / disfellowshipping, shunning, if they did not drop the case against the stepdad. And the elders went to the police in the court hearing and got the perpetrator released on his own recognizance and vouched for him. And 6 months later, he was arrested again,
did it again
for doing the same thing. And the family broke up, divorced, and the kids are gone.
So if that's not part of a worship practice, I don't know what is.
Especially when the elders go and vouch for the child abuser.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. All right, the next point. The sanctions available within the organization's internal disciplinary system are weak and leave perpetrators of child sexual abuse at large in the organization and the community. So those of you from the public who are not Jehovah's Witnesses that are watching this, you're in danger too, because they're left at large within the community. And as many of us have seen the news report of that pedophile, convicted pedophile, out in service, door to door, knocking on doors where children can be.
Yeah.
And he denies it. And then he turns around and does an interview with the news channel that, yeah, I was convicted, but, I promise I'm not going to be going door to door anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Like they said, the system is weak and leave the perpetrators of child sexual abuse at large in the organization and community.
And isn't that what Satanists would want? I mean, honestly, is that not what Satanists would want? They would want those people left alone in their community to continue to worship Satan by abusing children. And this is what the Australian Royal Commission has found out for themselves. Just that they choose not to use the narrative Satanism when it comes to this organization. And I believe personally that's done by choice because they don't want to fear the public that Satanists are knocking on your door Saturday morning saying, hey, have you heard the good news? While offering the Awaken Watchtower.
Well, I should say, we're not actually called all Jehovah's Witness Satanists, but, the evidence is by their own literature that they're Satanists.
And I have the concluding paragraph to read after all this is done here.
The next point. In deciding the sanctions to impose and or precautions to take in relation to a known or suspected perpetrator, the organization has inadequate regard to the risk that the perpetrator might re-offend, which in many cases they do.
They do.
Yeah. This demonstrates a serious lack of understanding of the nature and impact of child sexual abuse. And that's exactly what the organization views. They view it as a sin, not a crime.
Yep. And isn't that how a Satanist might view something like this? They don't view an act of worship as a crime. They wouldn't even view it as a sin.
The next point. The organization's general practice of not reporting serious instances of child sexual abuse to police or authorities, in particular where the complainant is a child, demonstrates a serious failure by the organization to provide for the safety and protection of children in the organization and in the community. So we have just 5, 6 short paragraphs,
But it's
and
the conclusion.
they've pretty much put the entire report into a great summary here, and this is exactly what Watchtower is guilty of and has been condemned for their inadequate child protection.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm actually going to read part of the paragraph above the concluding paragraph because just scanning this over, I find this very interesting. Members of the cult, now remember, they're writing this from the perspective that you at the door would read this article and not point to them, the Jehovah's Witness organization, as a satanic cult. This is what they write. Members of the cult make a strong lifetime commitment to the group, which includes a strict vow of secrecy. And that's what's being hidden from the world, or has been hidden from the world.
Don't want to bring reproach to Jehovah and his organization.
That's right.
So you have to keep quiet. Wait on Jehovah. He will take care of it. It's not in your, it's not up to you to be a whistleblower.
Right. They're actually quoting part of this from the national sheriff. They don't give you a date, a month, or even a page number. So there again, what's fake news? When you don't provide a date of this article, then it's got to be fake. But this is what they quote, allegedly. A member breaking the code of secrecy places his life and the lives of his families in serious jeopardy, the magazine added. Wow. They are programmed not to tell, said one Chicago authority. If they do, they are programmed to kill themselves. Programmed, indoctrinated to kill themselves. Well, being ex-members, Kim and I deal with a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are on the verge of and or have actually taken their own lives because as is being described from the perspective of a satanic cult, the members breaking the code of secrecy places his life and the lives of his family in serious jeopardy. As ex-members, to where my wife and I are right now, and for many, many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they have separated us from our flesh and blood because of their policy, because they have used words such as apostates, are influenced by Satan, because after all, when Satan was tempting Eve in the Garden of Eden, he became an independent thinker, and that's how dangerous independent thinking becomes, because when you think independently, you are now thinking like Satan does. You see how their narrative demonizes independent thinking, so that when people like Kim and I become independent thinkers and begin to realize, hey, wait a minute, this whole Watchtower thing is nothing but BS, we leave it. But our family members choose to demonize us because now we have independent thinking. But let's read the last paragraph. Coven members also tried to remain anonymous and unknown to law enforcement officials. They believe, said one source, their evil criminal acts will not be rewarded by Satan if they are identified and prosecuted by the authorities. And that's why the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, for all these decades, has had policies and procedures in place so that they could remain unidentified to the law authorities as a satanic cult, because they do sacrifice their members in operating rooms by refusing blood transfusions. Now, if you do any investigating regarding this whole policy in Jehovah's Witnesses and refusing of blood, you will see that decades ago they wrote a little book a little pamphlet, a little booklet that stated taking blood fractions was against God's law. Back in 2011, I believe it was, they reversed that position, saying now that taking blood fractions is a conscience matter. Well, isn't that what a satanic cult would want you to do? Refuse even blood fractions so that you could become that legalized human sacrifice? And that's exactly what this is. Because these people, this Watchtower Bible Tract Society, has used the Constitution of the United States of America, the freedom of worship, to twist Scripture so that they could now legalize human sacrifice. So when you look at the whole picture of Jehovah's Witnesses, not only do they sacrifice their own members in hospital rooms by refusing blood transfusions, they also secretly and hide their child molestation practice.
And I also want to mention that our son-in-law James made a very, awesome analogy. He said it's almost like Watchtower installs a self-destruct button, because when you leave, even some who have left like 20 years ago still believe that they are going to be killed at Armageddon by God because they left Jehovah's organization.
Yeah.
So they have installed this self-destruct button, and I just want to thank Joe and your contact for getting in contact with us and sending us the link to this. It's sad to report that another one of our sisters has killed herself.
Yeah, it's a sad occurrence for Kim and I, because we hear this a lot.
And we know she was a Jehovah's Witness, and we know that she was woken up because she was on several of the XJW community websites on Facebook and forums and stuff. And her name was Sabrina, I think it's Bedard, in Montreal, Canada. And let's see, I believe she was only 32. So tell me Watchtower is not sacrificing, making human sacrifices, because they install the self-destruct button and not everybody can uninstall that.
So how is that any different than what they're quoting here? They are programmed not to tell, said one Chicago authority. If they do, they are programmed to kill themselves, which becomes suicide.
Yeah.
And this is what this religion, these people knocking on your door Saturday morning, pretending to have good news of the kingdom.
And as many of you know, my own little brother killed himself, and I believe he was only like 32 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was in his early 30s in 2006. And it was, he never left a note, so we don't know. But we know he was raised a witness and he was gay.
Yeah.
So that obviously that self-destruct button was still there.
Yes. So for a conclusion, wanting to have our perspective about the Australian Royal Commission, it's good that some government entities are taking this situation regarding these religious cults serious enough to investigate. But unfortunately, and I really hate to say this, until the Constitution, the Second Amendment, giving freedom of religion is removed, people like the Watchtower Bible Tract Society will continue to sacrifice people. You government officials are not hurting this organization enough by making them change their policies. What you need to do is you need to take away their money.
I think it might be the First Amendment. I think the
First
Second Amendment is the right to bear
keep
arms.
and bear arms. Yeah, that one I do not want removed. Trust me, I like my guns. But yes, and I think everybody knew where I was going with that, because the First Amendment guarantees the freedom of the press. And wait a minute, freedom of the press. So how is it that you, the powers to be, can now label somebody like Alex Jones, somebody like Mark Dice, somebody like
Next News Network as
fake news? If you shut that narrative down, get them off the internet, then you are in violation of the Second Amendment rights to freedom of the press, because these people are acting as the press, just like Kim and I. and other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses doing videos, we are acting like the press. We are bringing the truth to people about what they're being lied up to and about when it becomes apparent that everybody is being lied to, not only by religious entities such as the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, but also
mainstream media.
Mainstream media. You're being lied to, because we all watched in these recent elections that the mainstream media said, there is no way Donald Trump's going to win. Trump can't win this. Oh, look at the margin that Hillary is leading in the polls. There's no way. You all got lied to. Just like these Jehovah's Witnesses, like I was lied to, she was lied to our entire lives from this fake medium, the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. But anyhow, getting back, I digressed a little bit. Until these governments can learn to hit organizations such as the Watchtower Bible Tract Society in their pocketbooks, and I mean deep in their pocketbooks, people like this, organizations like this will remain forever, because the Constitution guarantees their freedom of religion. So you have to get around that. Now I'm going to suggest something for the Goddard Commission, for the UK Commission. When you investigate the Watchtower Bible Tract Society in their child sexual abuse, why not take some time and investigate how they manipulated every single Jehovah's Witness around the world to volunteer their time going from door to door. This is a corporation. They should be paying a wage and back wages for those that have been duped into doing this for free. All you got to do is look at behind Kim and I right now, and you can see the amount of books that we were peddling from door to door, free of charge, while we were accepting donations that went directly to the Watchtower Bible Tract Society off of the sweat of our brow. Now, if you do not think that this was nothing more than a volunteer service, when you get a Jehovah's Witness elder in front of you, start questioning their little slips of paper to where they would report the amount of time per month they spent in the door-to-door and or preaching or Bible study activity. That piece of paper becomes a time card that keeps track of what that individual Jehovah's Witness has done in the preceding month. They use that time slip to either hand out more privileges, such as the male member. If you have, 10 months or 10 hours per month for X amount of months, then you get the privilege of passing the mics. And other things such as that. This organization keeps track of the time the individual Jehovah's Witness spends in the door-to-door preaching work. If this was not anything more than a voluntary service, then these guys would not be keeping track of the amount of time the individual Jehovah's Witness spends in that preaching work. If you guys really want to affect and stop this religious cult, first of all, take away their 501c3, because these people are not a non-profit organization.
They're a real estate empire.
Right, because they keep track of the hours and the amount of time, and then they use that as a noose around the neck of the individual Jehovah's Witness.
Well, even back, the reason they had to stop charging interest on Kingdom Hall loans is because they were charging 6% interest to congregations for the loans on their Kingdom Hall. And guess what? They got hammered by the IRS because they're acting as a bank.
As a bank.
Nonprofit organizations cannot act as a bank and collect interest on loans.
So take that 501c3 away.
So on this thought, Mike and I have mentioned several times in past videos about how Jehovah's Witnesses, rank and file, do not represent the society. The elders do not represent the organization. And even governing body Garrett Loesch, in his deposition to that court in California on the child abuse, he said that he didn't represent Watchtower. He had no say in its everyday running. So he did this great big long deposition that, you know, he was not representing the organization. Busted, Watchtower. We just got 2 forms here, and I'm going to put the link down below to these forms. Now, this is instructions to the elders and the congregation. One is for elders and one is for the congregation on how to obtain an employer identification number from the U.S. government. Now, this is what you need to be a corporation. Now, we know because we had to go through this ourselves, and we had to get one of these employer identification numbers for our corporation. So they have the instructions, and they talk about going to the irs.gov website and get online, and they go through this whole thing of how to do this. Number 10, under who is the responsible party for the church, select individual. Then click continue. Under your selected individual, please tell us about the responsible party. Fill in the name of the coordinator of the body of elders and his social security number. So this is for the COBE.
Yep.
Okay? Now for those Jehovah's Witnesses want to argue that you do not represent the organization, then Watchtower is lying to the United States government, and they should have their 501(c)(3) nonprofit status taken away from them.
Because listen to the next statement.
Because number 12, select the button, I am a duly authorized member, officer, or employee of the organization or government entity, then click continue. So you have to tell the government that you are a duly authorized member, officer, or employee of the organization. So how is that not representing the organization?
You should be paid a wage. See, this is what we're getting at to all of these government entities that have got the Watchtower Bible Tract Society in front of them. Start questioning whether each member should be paid a wage or not. You're going to find that Watchtower is going to do one of two things. They're either going to file bankruptcies to avoid having to pay back wages, and or they're going to do away with keeping track of time, because this is truly, if this was truly a volunteer service, then there's no need to keep track of individual time spent that you go out from door to door preaching in any given month.
Now on the last page of this instructions on how to do all this, I wanted to go to some more instructions when they're setting up their corporation. When opening a bank account, you may be asked to provide organizational documents such as articles of incorporation or a certified fictitious name statement. You may provide a copy of your articles of incorporation. If you are asked to provide evidence that you qualify as a nonprofit organization, please contact the treasurer's office. How many Jehovah's Witnesses know they have a regular treasurer's office? To provide a letter from Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses explaining your exempt status that you can submit to the bank.
Now, it makes you wonder why Watchtower is coming out with all of this right now, because are some of these governments, well, we already know that in the UK they lost their nonprofit status. So, I mean, come on, Watchtower. You guys are done. Your throats have been cut, and you're bleeding to death because this internet is not only producing fake news, we're also telling the truth. Because in your magazine that I read earlier, you go so far as to expose identifying marks of a satanic cult, and one of them is the ritualistic abuse of children, and that's what you people do, and that's what you practice.
And then the latest elders letter, yes, we've got that. It is telling the elders to get all of their records up to date and all the application forms that the rank and file have given them, and to check all of this, see if there's any changes to whether the applicant is still exemplary in the congregation. And you know why? Because down here at the bottom it says, and thus will avoid potentially causing embarrassment or in any way affecting the vital process of inviting volunteers to serve on a project. So that tells me they've been having a problem with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're getting caught, Watchtower.
So we apologize for this being so long, and Nicholas, we hope there's something in here that you can hopefully use. And I'm going to put the links down below to all of this, and also to our website where the Australian Royal Commission, all that information
Yeah, it's a
is already
107-page report, correct?
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over 100, like 107, 117 pages, something like that. And well, I'll just look real quick here. 107 pages.
Yeah.
And I will have the link to that and to the articles. And thank you so much, everybody, for everything, for your love, support, cards, gifts.
And yes, and share this video because your neighbor could very much be starting a Bible study with Jehovah's Witnesses come tomorrow morning, and your neighbor may have 3 or 4 little kids.
Yeah.
And in time, one of those kids will be sexually abused because this organization has hidden it for decades.
Yeah.
And they still do it.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And please share. And please have a wonderful weekend. And we love you.
Bye.
Bye.